It's still dark outside. It was dark when I went to bed, and it was dark when I got up, and I'm sure it'll be dark when I leave the place as well. But never mind, you know. Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to be here in Helsingborg. I remember the first time I saw Helsingborg. It was many years ago. I was actually in Elsinore, and there was a big football match going on over in Sweden, and I was in Elsinore. There was a conference in Copenhagen, and they took us to Elsinore, and then I saw, this is Sweden, my God, it's so close here, it's just across the water. And the two twin cities, I say, are very different. We went there. I've been in Lund now for 8 years, and we went when my daughter came with her daughter, and we went across on the ferry and over to Elsinore. And I remember being very shocked when I got to Elsinore, because they were selling beer and wine in the street, and I thought, this is totally immoral. It should not be allowed. And I thought, my God, you've gone native. Because it was, I mean, I'm not kidding, it was a shock. It was of a mild nature. So, where are we? Yes, greetings from Lund in the south. Many of you will have been there, most of you will have heard about it. This is the university town of Lund, with the White House there, with the cathedral, the remnants of being Danish. Lovely place. And this is the biomedical centre in Lund as well. This is 200 million euros worth of investment. 2 billion Swedish crowns. You can't believe it. Amazingly far-sighted. And the high-tech and the tradition are side by side. But above all, Lund is a bicycle town. That was one of the sights that I saw when I first came to Lund. I've got a rather beautiful bike. I keep it locked up and attached to the electrical main so no one can steal it. Because I took that photograph outside of the gym, and I thought, my God, you know, these Swedes, they can ride one-wheeled bicycles. But Lund is a place where you can lose your bike one day, and then a week later you can go and buy it back in front of the Akademiska Föreningen. It's a recycling town. We are Stardust. Gustav said, look, you know, astronomy, we need to talk about, the theme is astronomy. And so we are Stardust, and indeed, I am a student in astronomy now, having reached my troisième âge, as the French would say. And so, we do. I'm Colin Carlile, I'm from the north of England, and I work for Village Scandinavia now on a part-time basis, but I do other things as well. And we are Stardust, and it's absolutely correct, we are Stardust. And this is a supernova. It's not the Tycho Brahe supernova that we heard about. Tycho Brahe indeed discovered a supernova. I didn't see it in any way like this, but there were two supernovas which occurred in quick succession, and they had a big effect on the way in which womankind looked at the universe, which was unchanging, and it was perfect, and it was down on Earth where things were not exactly perfect. But these two supernovae had an effect, as did the earthquake in Portugal, in changing the way in which mankind looked at our future. And I can see that Gustav is looking at the clock already. I have a little mirror, I can see what it's doing. So in the Big Bang, nuclear fusion in stars and in supernova, all of the atoms were created which are part of our bodies now. We were parts of stars, And it's rather a remarkable story as to how it was that we've got where we've got. And this supernova here was discovered in 1680. It exploded 11,000 years ago, but it took 11,000 years for the light to reach us. And the sizes in the universe are absolutely vast. And this is really mind-blowing. And every atom, as I say, was created in our bodies. Now, large international research infrastructures like the European Very Large Telescope in Paranal in Chile was where some of these measurements are made. Space telescopes as well, like the Hubble telescope. The Hubble telescope was a fantastic achievement. It was put in orbit in 1990, and it has gone well beyond the scientific goals, which were to measure distances to the second, third layer of stars and galaxies. It has seen many, many things which were not expected. And one thing that was done, I find it amazing that this thing can point. That it's floating in space, disconnected. I have difficulty pointing on this stage, but this thing can point, and it can stay pointed. And what happened with the Hubble telescope was it was pointed out of the galaxy, looking upwards out of the plane. And if you were to have a grain of sand on your finger, and you were to look through that grain of sand, that little area, at the area of sky, which is what the Hubble telescope did for 11 days. It just looked, and there was nothing in the sky there. And that's what was seen. After 11 days of exposure, the Hubble Ultra Deep Field, and in there you can look back to roughly 1 billion years after the Big Bang. The universe is 13.8 billion years old, and so you saw this richness thanks to these large scientific facilities that they take decades to produce, and they produce data like that. Now, Tycho Brahe, when I was at school, he was called Tycho Brahe, but he's not called Tycho Brahe, he's called Tycho Brahe, and of course he was a Skånska guy. He was neither Danish nor Swedish. He was born here at Knutstorp in 1546. You will know this better than I know it, in fact. And Gustav is nodding. You're not meant to nod at that point. You're meant to go, no. It's all new to me. And so Tycho Brahe was a remarkable man in many ways. He had his own large research infrastructure on Vane. It's roughly here. And I've been over to Vane a few times and been to his observatory, and it's rather impressive, but he managed to persuade the King of Denmark to give him a lot of money in order that he could better prophesy the King of Denmark's future lifespan. He sold it to him on the basis of astrology. I will be able better to give you your horoscope. And that's the way scientists operate. They actually tell a story and say, yes, Mr. Research Minister, I'll be able to tell whether you will win the election or you will not. And so this is Stena boy. There was one before that, Uriana boy. And from there, Tycho Brahe made his measurements. He had no telescopes, but he was extremely precise. He had this quadrant, and he was looking at the transit of stars. So as stars passed by slowly as the Earth rotates in the other direction, he's clicking. And here he is, he's the one who makes the observation. And this is the guy he transmits the information to, and this is the guy who writes it down. And as should be, he is bigger than him, and he is bigger than him. It's the way it is, And this is what it looks like now, and it looks rather modest, but it wasn't. It was a revolution. And he was revolutionary, actually, Tycho Brahe. But things happened to Tycho Brahe, and you can tell me these probably better than I can. But he had this kind of attraction to things happening to him. He had a pet moose, of course, you know that, an elk. He had a dwarf. In those days, you could have dwarves. I mean, I find it very strange, but he had a dwarf called Jep, and he lost his nose in a duel. And so he was exhumed. He's buried in Prague. He was exhumed in the year 2000. They wanted to check whether his nose was gold, silver, or what it was, and it turned out it was brass. And you can see his bones. It looks awful. Poor guy. He was exhumed twice. Anyway, he had a pet elk. The pet elk unfortunately came to an untimely end, and it tells me that he got the elk drunk. That was a party trick. Gustav's nodding, so it must be right. He got the elk drunk. It was a party trick, and the poor old elk fell downstairs because dinner was upstairs. He fell down the stairs, and then they had to kill the poor thing. But I've got no doubt it was put in the freezer and was distributed to all and sundry. Of course, you have to be careful with elks. This can happen. It's never happened to me, thank God. And it didn't happen to us this morning, but it was a close thing. Driving up the dark motorway. And this is his tomb in Prague, 1601. So he wasn't very old when he died, and supposedly he died from a ruptured bladder. He'd sat at dinner and had refused to go against protocol, and died 10 days later, poor guy. However, Tycho Brahe is called the greatest observational astronomer that ever lived, and this is really something. The greatest observational astronomer that ever lived. And he came from near here, not very far away. And he's someone to be proud of. And in some ways, I certainly have referred to him in talking about the ESS. And he was an innovator, and innovation is extremely important, as you know. And I start with a quote here from Sheikh Yamani: "The Stone Age did not end because there wasn't any stone left." And it's true. People look forward and they see things, and they smelt metal. It was mercury and things like this. The Stone Age did not end because of a lack of stone. He was an oil guy, Sheikh Yamani, of course. And this, I am proud to say, is my phone. Fantastic. I made the right decision. I've had it a week. I haven't yet dropped it, but I'm going to drop it. It's just so beautiful. It's too slippery. It's like a bar of soap. That's what the mobile phone looks like today. That's what it looked like 20 years ago. And then when you had one of those, did you have one? You had one. Yeah. Gustav had one. He was very swish in those days, because, you know, to have one of those with you was very, very smart. Unfortunately, you had to have a charger, a bit like one of those loudspeakers there, which is not shown in this diagram. And that was 20 years ago. What will it be like in another 20 years' time? What will it be like? What will the innovations be like? We'll go back to the old thing, you think? No, it'll be kind of USB straight into the brain, I think, or maybe into the retina of the eye, but it will be very different. And so unless we build the best facilities, then with the best instruments, we cannot develop or understand or harness, in our case, new materials, because that's what the European Spallation Source, that's what Max 4 is all about, understanding new materials and developing materials for the future. And if you look at the way that materials dominate our lives, and we are not aware of it, we are totally not aware of it. We don't realize how much science and engineering and technology has gone into these kind of things. They're full of new materials, from the light-emitting diodes, the blue diodes that were awarded the Nobel Prize, the ceremony coming up in Stockholm on the 10th of December, the nanomaterial battery, lithium. We're not aware of it. But there are years and years and hundreds of people doing research on it. And we look at pacemakers and implants, that's for Gustav and I, of course. Transport, mobile phones, biofuels, pharmaceuticals, solar panels, more efficient functional foods even. Yogurt that will not degrade, whether it's in Iceland or whether it's in South Africa. cosmetics, cleaning materials, all materials. Cleaning materials are extremely complex. They're not just kind of goo. They are very complex. So how do we see these materials? Well, we have a number of ways of seeing. This is a book by John Berger, Ways of Seeing. It's worth reading. I read it quite a long time ago. Light is what we have here. What do you need in order to see something? I've got Gustav's phone here. There's a message for you, by the way. I just thought I would let you know. How do I see this? How do I know it's a mobile phone? I need two things. I need a source of light, and I need a detector. And then the light that illuminates the phone then reflects off into my eye. In my eye, the lens then forms an image on the retina, and the retina of the eye is a pixelated detector, which has not been surpassed by other man-made detectors. And in the brain, there's a process going on, sometimes, actually. It wasn't too much processing this morning, which says it's a mobile phone. And that's what you do with light. Now, with X-rays, which come from Max 4, or neutrons, which come from the ESS, you do exactly the same. Although, in this case, you want to look at the atoms and you want to look at the molecules in materials. You want to understand how materials are put together. Polymers, pharmaceuticals, wells in construction materials. And for that you need smaller probes. Light is of the order of 5,000 angstroms, a nice Swedish unit of length. X-rays and neutrons are around about 1 angstrom. They can see atoms and they can see molecules. And the difference I can show you here, that's camera, as you might have realized, in visible light. If you look at it with X-rays, that's what you find. You see that the high mass material blocks out the X-rays, and the plastic you don't see at all. And with neutrons, this is what you see. Neutrons and X-rays are very complementary. And so here you see the plastic. You don't see the metal, though. So you have two methods of looking that are complementary. They give you two pictures. So if you want to really understand a pharmaceutical or your DNA, then you need these two probes, is what they're called. Another quote from the American philosopher Ralph Emerson: "If a man can write a better book, preach a better sermon, or make a better mousetrap, though he builds his house in the woods, the world will make a beaten path to his door." And that's what we're hoping with ESS and Max 4, that we will attract researchers from all around the world. So Max 4 and ESS are a better mousetrap. In fact, they're two better mousetraps. And last night I was saying, what's the plural of mousetrap? It's certainly not mice trap, it's mousetraps. And this is the view that will be in Lund from the northeast in 2025. The ESS project, which is this, started off in 1989, so already it's been on the go for roughly speaking 25 years, and before it reaches full specification it'll be another 15 years. So it's 40 years, so it's a working lifetime from the beginning of a project until the end, and it's you require a certain amount of determination in order to do that. And so here we have Copenhagen Airport. They're in the mist, whereas in Sweden it's totally clear. And then this is the bridge and tunnel that connects the two countries, going through Malmö underground, and then Lund, arriving at the university town of Lund. And then here we have Max 4, the synchrotron, which if you've been recently, it looks beautiful. It really looks beautiful. And it's being built, and it will be functional in 2016. And then there's the European spallation source. Here, this is the neutron source, this is the X-ray source. And together they will be the world's leading facilities. So this little area here will be a mecca for material scientists coming in. And it is the opportunity for a lot of innovation and a lot of opportunity for industry in order to horizon scan and pick up the ideas and go and develop them. And then in the middle, the place where I'm now advisor, Science Village Scandinavia, sitting here, where that will be the reception area and all of the support buildings, conference centers, science centers, science exhibitions will all be held here, including industries and innovation, etc. So if you look at Max 4 as it was not long ago, a month ago, so this is what it looks like now. It almost looks like a computer-generated drawing. It's not. So the office building is now complete, and they're now installing the accelerator in here, and the instruments that measure come out from here, and scientists work inside this ring. And when they are confused and don't understand things, they've helpfully built a maze in here. So you can go out and you can walk your way around the maze, and then you're totally lost at that point. But that's Max 4, and it really is lovely. It really is surprisingly delightful. And this is now the European Spallation Source site, where I was until 2 years ago. This is 76 hectares of land, an enormous amount of land, and the accelerator will be built here, and the target station will be built here where the neutrons are produced, and the measurements will be made in instruments around here. And this is the beginnings of Science Village here, and you can just see the old wooden windmill and the old farmhouse there, which we're developing now, and the rest of it will be populated as well. What you see here are the archaeological digs, and there was a lot of different things found there. This was a road that was used, and what was not understood was that the area around here was not only a stopping point, it was a place where people had set up dwellings in order. They were heading down to, there was a river in those days in Lund, and now no longer, and there was a crossing, and that was heading to that crossing. So it's got some historic backgrounds as well here. So Science Village Scandinavia sits in the middle. I've got brochures outside if you want to take them, and you can sign up there for newsletters, become a science villager if you so wish. I encourage you to do so. But basically, it is the glue between the European Spallation Source and the Max 4 X-ray facility. It will be a home for innovation, and it is sitting in here. And this is the tram line that will eventually come up from Lund. It's the subject of political wrangling as to whether it will be financed, but it almost certainly will be. And that will mean that you can come very quickly from the airport to the railway station and up here. And all of this is to be developed. So Science Village today looks like this. That's it. You're impressed, I can tell. And the windmill looks like that. Even more impressive. It's the oldest wooden windmill in Sweden. It's falling down. And our plan is to actually rebuild it and to use it as a center for a science exhibition for the public. So people can come in and they can see this is the way that we used energy 400 years ago. As a kind of thought-provoking emblem. And we are now developing this, and we will eventually develop much, much more. So this is what that building will look like, and there'll be buildings all around. There has to be restaurants and cafes and all kinds of things, accommodation blocks for the researchers. And the mill is here, and there'll be this science center as well. And so we're just in the process now of calling for expressions of interest to build on that land. So I would encourage you, become a science villager today. Sign up outside if you wish. Because we have just launched the competition for the first stage of letting or selling the land here according to certain conditions, and so Science Village will sit here, Max 4 will be operating here, ESS will be functional there, and that will be in 2025. And then Lund and Skåne will, we hope, be a magnet for researchers and innovation alike. And at that point, as the clock is approaching 8 o'clock in the morning, my God, I stop and I say, to close off with, some things I've learned. The 6 stages of a project. Enthusiasm, that's what we had for ESS. Intense enthusiasm. It was the way we kind of succeeded. We will not be beaten. Disillusionment kicks in at some point. Oh my God, you know, we want the money and they won't give us the money, and oh, these people. Panic then follows. And then people start running around like headless chickens. At that point, of course, there is a search for the guilty. And when they find the guilty, they punish the innocent. I mean, you know, this is the way it goes, isn't it? They punish the innocent. And then at the end, there's praise and honor for the... So... Life is like that, you know. It's the rich what gets the pleasure, and it's the poor what gets the blame. So I leave you there with one final thought, and that is that you must always be aware of risks. And here we are in the African bush, and they're doing the right thing. They're looking onto the horizon. And this is really important, and it's only come up in the last 10 years or so. You've got to keep looking for the risks, but you've got to be a little bit careful that you are looking in the right direction, because like Gustav is behind me, you can find that things are looking at you. So at that point I say, thank you for listening.